This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
Hello and welcome to Voices Unhindered. I'm Crystal Jenkinson. On this show, I give a unique perspective and listening ear to voices that often go unheard. I want everyone to know that you are not alone and that your voice and story matters. This week on Voices Unhindered, I speak with former ballet teacher and HIV/AIDS counsellor Karen Harvey about her life experiences in South Africa, coming to know Christ and her spiritual battles. Could you please tell me about your upbringing and background in South Africa?
I grew up in Durban, which is a city at the sea. As a professional dancer, moved to Johannesburg, which is the big city in South Africa, and I lived there for over 40 years. And then the last 20 years of my life, we lived on a farm.
Cool. And what got you into dancing?
My mum sent me to ballet as a little girl. I think I was 6. And, that was my kind of extramural activity, and I really loved it, and I continued with ballet. And even when I was a teenager and I didn't really feel like ballet was so cool anymore, my mum she just kept me going. Like, she really encouraged me to keep going, and I went on to do my final exams. And my teachers in ballet, I always wanted to be a professional dancer in these beautiful big musicals that you saw on the stage, but I didn't have enough confidence. So if people said to me, what do you want to do when you finish school? I would say I want to be a ballet teacher, but I didn't really want to be a ballet teacher. I actually wanted to be one of those dancers in those musicals. So I did join a ballet company for a year. Well, I auditioned and I was accepted to join a ballet company.
Do you mind me just going back to your teen years,
Yes.
like with your mum pushing you into ballet? Do you feel that was like a healthy push? Are you glad that she did that? Did you feel pressured to look a certain way?
I think in hindsight, I'm grateful. But at the time, especially when I was a teenager, I didn't have the right body for a ballerina. I was actually quite chubby. And I felt a little bit pushed at that time. She didn't force me to go, but, say, but look how far you've come. I mean, this is the truth. As a ballet dancer, I had to be very skinny, and I wasn't a skinny teenager. So in Durban, where I grew up, it was like a very, very, very hot city. And I remember my ballet mistress asking my mom to make me sleep in these plastic pants so that I would sweat the weight off. Didn't want to carry on, and I would bunk ballet classes and all that kind of thing. But somehow, by the grace of God, I kept going, or my ballet teacher kept taking me back. And then
You did become a teacher soon after, you said you were accepted in a...
Yeah. So I did my teacher's exam. That was the final exam of my ballet career. And then I really wanted to dance in a ballet company. I did not want to teach straight away. So I auditioned for a ballet company in the city that I lived in, and I was accepted, but I was told that before the first day I had to lose 5 kilograms.
How did you feel about that?
Oh, I was like, well, I want to be in this ballet company. I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to just say yes.
Yeah.
And I really feel like the Lord just carried me through that, because, I was 18. I don't remember, did I diet? I don't actually remember. But anyway, somehow by hook or by crook, when I joined that ballet company, I had lost weight. I don't know how much I'd lost, but I'd lost weight. I joined the ballet company, which was a professional ballet company, and I was with him for a year in the corps de ballet. So that's the chorus of the ballet. And I really enjoyed the motivation, and I did ballet and then there were boys in the chorus. So when you watch those beautiful ballets,
like Swan Lake and things, yeah.
Yes, you'd always have the main couple. So it was a lot of hard work, and it was beautiful. But I realized in that year, it's I'm going to have to choose ballet or a life, let's say that, because a lot of those ballerinas never had children, never got married, because it was all about your body and your strength and how you could maintain as a ballet dancer. And I loved it to a point. But I decided, I had an aunt who lived in the big city in Johannesburg, and she always told me about these beautiful musicals that they did in Johannesburg. They didn't do that in my city in those years. So I decided not to continue and not to renew my contract after the year, and go to this big city called Johannesburg, live with my aunt, and see what I could explore my dancing career a little bit more. So that was a big decision that I made at 19 years old.
Did you regret going, or did?
I was so fortunate. I say I was so fortunate. I feel like the Lord guided me to the places I needed to be in the contexts that I needed to. I've always been quite an outgoing person, and television was big in the television shows. Variety shows were very big in those years. I'm talking about the 80s now. And I started going to dance classes at a certain place, and my aunt actually helped me find these places. I had no clue. And the place I was going to dance classes, just like social dance classes almost, they were doing a television. The dancers from there were doing a television variety show, and they said to me, "Oh, would you like to audition?" I was like, okay. Well, I didn't know what I was auditioning for. I was a ballet dancer, and I was learning this kind of modern dance, which was lovely. It was more like, I want to say, like Broadway dance. It was like with hats and sticks.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And I auditioned for this, and I actually wasn't accepted into the first one, if I'm honest. I wasn't, if I remember correctly. But I kept going to the classes, and they sort of saw that I could do more than ballet. I think maybe on the third audition, I auditioned again, and then I was accepted for this variety show. And then from doing that for television, I was then booked as a professional dancer, not just a ballet dancer, professional dancer, more and more and more. And then my career kind of...
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about becoming a dance teacher? Was that like after that?
That was after. That was after 20 years. Literally, I danced as a professional dancer for 20 years. And that ranged from television to musicals, beautiful musicals like Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Singing in the Rain, My Fair Lady, those kind of beautiful big musicals as a dancer. So I became a freelance professional dancer. So I would have to go to auditions, and I was either booked or I wasn't booked. Like TV commercials, we did fashion shows where they would have like a dance feature in a big fashion show. I worked as a professional dancer on a cruise liner for 18 months. I then also worked at resorts. So after my 20...
Just to get back to the industry, like, did you find that a lot of the women or even men struggled with eating disorders or self-conscious issues,
Yes.
anxiety, things like that in the industry? And how did you deal with that?
Well, to be honest, I constantly had a body issue. Like, I constantly was working out before rehearsals, and rehearsals were 8 hours a day, and watching what I was eating. And yes, there were a lot of, let's say, girls and women who, had severe eating disorders. The boys, on the other hand, had to always constantly be going to gym and building so that they looked like men and not effeminate. This is the norm in a professional contract. So I worked at a resort for one of the things I did called Sun City, which you might have heard of. It's beautiful. We were in an extravaganza. It was incredibly hard work. We did 3 shows on a Saturday. But after the second show, we all lined up to be weighed. That was part of our contract. So I was contracted at X amount of kilograms, whatever it was, 52 kilograms. And every Saturday we were weighed. And that was like torture. And, we would all stand in line, the boys in one line, girls in another line, and we would get to the front and we'd hop on the scale and our weight would be recorded.
Do you think that was something that kind of made you more aware of like, I have to be this, or I have to be that? Like, if there wasn't the aspect of being weighed, do you think it would have been easier for you to...
Oh, yeah. Because it kind of worked as almost like reverse psychology. I knew I had to be weighed, and I knew that, like, from the Monday, I knew that I was going to be weighed on Saturday, and then it would be so in the front of my mind that all I would want to do is eat. And then often when I was weighed, I'd put on weight.
That sounds like an eating disorder to me, because I struggled with that when I was like 14, just from peer pressure, like you have to look like a stick, that silly idea. Whereas for me, like now I'm happy with who I am. But I used to get the scales out and weigh myself, and I'd always have like anxiety about seeing the numbers. And like one day when I feel like God set me free from that, I just threw away the scales, and I feel so much better when I wasn't looking at the scales, and I don't even care anymore. And like, it's not an issue, it used to be.
Completely relate to that. In fact, when I left that contract, when I did 18 months there, and it was beautiful in many ways, but that was part of in those years, that was what happened. I don't know if it happens today, but when I left that contract, my staff accommodation was on the first floor, and when I left, I literally threw my scale out the window.
That's good.
I threw it out the window, and it smashed, and I was like, I am done with that.
Kind of similar to what I just said,
Yeah.
Do you mind going back to the statement you said about, I knew I'd have to choose life or ballet? What do you mean? Can you expand? What do you mean by that?
Exactly that. It's like I looked around me and I fitted into that situation for a year, but honestly, it was like we would go to the canteen at lunchtime, and the other ballet dancers would have like 3 grapes and a cup of coffee and a cigarette. I never smoked in my life, so that wasn't going to help me. And I would want like a plate of food. Like, I needed the energy. But anyway, I realized that, and like I say, a lot of them didn't have children. A lot of them went through their lives never having children in their body.
Yeah, also like that can affect childbirth, restricting your calorie intake and things like that.
So I realized through that time that wasn't going to be who I was going to be.
Yeah.
Or maybe even who I could be. It was not on my radar. I just realized that there was more that I wanted. I loved the ballet, and even now if I go and watch a ballet, I absolutely love it. But I wasn't made for that lifestyle.
Sorry, back to you having kids.
So all I wanted to say about my weight and my body struggles is that after my first child was born, I never, ever had body struggles again.
Oh.
It's weird. And then as I had my second child, who's my middle son, my body issues, my body weight, it even got better.
That's
so
amazing.
It's just weird. The less I focused on it.
Exactly. And you've got a lovely figure now for your age.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life. I'm very conscious about health, and I'm very conscious about exercise, which is healthy now. It's not like
it's healthy.
It's not like the only thing in my life where it was for many years.
It can become an idol, like when you addiction, and even obsessing about things can become more important than God, and God doesn't want that.
Fully. So, I mean, obviously that is definitely a massive part of my journey is committing my life to the Lord.
And when did you become a Christian, or were you parents Christians, or did you?
So my mum was always part of the Anglican Church. I grew up going to Sunday school at the Anglican Church, and I knew all the creeds and all the things we used to say, and I don't really remember how I felt doing all of that, but I went and I did the confirmation and all of that, but I only really started.
Wait, what's the confirmation?
So
I've never heard of
confirmation is
that.
part of the Anglican. It's close to the Catholic.
Oh, I see.
The Catholic faith. At 13, you...
Is it like an oath? What kind of oath?
It's an oath of making God... We didn't talk too much about Jesus. Making
That's
God the king of your life. It's what I grew up with, and like a religion. Always went to church on Sundays, but I didn't have a relationship with God. I didn't really know what that meant.
Yeah.
And then in my early 30s, I went with a dancer friend who was a guy, and he took me to his church. He said, "Don't you want to come to church with me?" He was always talking about Jesus, and Jesus was a bit irritating because I didn't really know what he was talking about. And then he said to me, I still went to my Anglican church on Sundays, but he said to me, "Why don't you come with my wife and I to church on Sunday?" And I said, "Okay." And I went on that Sunday, and this was a charismatic church. This was a New Testament church. People were clapping and singing, and I didn't know that. Anglican church was very...
formal way.
Yeah. And I went with him, and my word, I found myself on the floor, slain in the spirit.
That's cool.
I was able to give my life to the Lord, and that changed my life hugely.
So you had a real experience with God himself.
I've never looked back on that.
And how did you meet your band? And do you mind briefly touching on that?
No, not at all. I met my husband actually in a musical theatre production, but he's not a dancer at all. I was dancing in this in Snow White, the pantomime. He was on the technical side of the production. So he was on the stage. He was a stage manager, and he would be the guy like you, with the screen, and he would make all the sets go up and down.
Oh,
and
I see.
On and off, and I met him in that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah,
it's a cool way to meet someone.
It's really lovely. So we were totally diverse. He was always in the background, and I was on the stage.
After you came to know Christ, like for yourself, how did that change your, like, what you felt called to do? Did you kind of go back into ballet teaching, or did you kind of like move in a different direction where you feel God called you? So
I carried on as a dancer for some years, and then my second child was born, Jordan. And I realized at that stage, so to be a professional dancer, you have to do a good amount of traveling. And after Jordan was born, I was actually the PA to a director, a musical director at that time through my pregnancy, and I carried on with that job. And then I realized I didn't actually want to leave my family all the time to travel, or for months at a time, or weeks or even a week at a time. I didn't really want to do that anymore. My eldest child was then a teenager, or starting to become a teenager. And we decided to change our lifestyle. We were fortunate enough to sell our home, and we bought a farm on the outskirts of the big city. And we moved to that farm. And it's interesting. I was working as the production manager of a particular musical that was about to travel to Germany. And I had my air ticket and my visa to go with as the production manager. And we moved to the farm. And in that first month, Jordan, at that stage, was 5 years old. And at that time, I just realized, I don't want to do this. I don't want to leave him now. We've just moved to this new farm. He's going to a new school, and I'm going to go away for a month. Actually, I already played about it. My husband wasn't a Christian yet, which is also an interesting story. And I just said to my husband, I just feel like I don't want to do that. So he said, well, then don't. Just resign. I said, yeah, but then I don't have a job. And he said, it's okay. You're going to be fine. We're going to find something. So I did that. I resigned. I didn't go to Germany. And I was really torn, I got to be honest. Came to his new preschool, and I would sit there with him for like the first week. I sat with him every morning because he didn't want to be left. And the secretary of the school said to me, don't you teach swimming? And I was like, no, I can swim, but I've never taught swimming. So she said, we don't have any swimming teachers in this little town, and there are 10-year-old children who can't swim. So I said, well, I can swim. And then I thought, was there Google then? I don't think it was. I just did some research, and I saw that there was a swimming teacher's course I could go and do in the city. And I said to my husband, maybe I should do this, And I did that, and I got through I managed to get through this quite intense, but my body was very fit. I got through this training, and then I came back and I said to them, look, I've decided to go on this swimming teacher's course. And they were like, whoa, we will be waiting. So long story short, Jesus was incredibly faithful. Like, I did the course, I came back, I showed them my certificate, and they said, well, would I like them to put a little notification in the school newsletter? And I said, yes, would you? And within 2 weeks, I had 45 students and 2 hands. Wow. I was like, how am I going to teach all these children to swim? Anyway, that was incredible. I did that for years. I did that for, I think, 7 years. And then I got more involved with the school, and they would do a production every year, like a show. And they asked me, would I be willing to come and help?
That's cool.
And after the first year, I was directing and producing the little school productions, which I loved every year, and teaching swimming.
That's
and
cool.
So that's how my career sort of changed. And then about 3 years of volunteering doing the school production, I decided to start studying as a Montessori preschool teacher, because I loved the preschool age. It's like they were just so... So I did that, but I did that from a distance. I didn't go into classes. I did that from a distance. And I actually didn't finish my teacher's training. I wish I had, but I didn't finish. I did some of the assignments, but I didn't finish. But the school said to me, they are looking for a preschool teacher, and they'll take me anyway, because they'd worked with me in the productions and as a swimming teacher, so they'd gotten to know me.
Cool.
And they said, we'd love to have you on as a preschool teacher. Like, I started with a girl from Sweden. We started teaching in preschool together, and then she decided to go back. And then for the next 9 years, I I was the preschool teacher at this little school, and the swimming teacher, and the production, and the director, and the dancing teacher. They then got to know that I was a dancer, and I was the dancing teacher as well. So I had this beautiful career for 9 years.
I feel like all those skills like transferable. Like obviously not everyone can dance, but like you know what I mean, like teaching and things like that, and working with kids.
And if I'm honest, I'll just go back a little bit. Like when I danced at this beautiful resort where I was weighed every Saturday. And we, I had my eldest son at that time, so he was with me. But there was this, I think this is actually the core of my being, really, if I'm honest. There was this yearning inside of me for something more. So the dancing was great, and it was, but in a way, it was very fictitious. It was very like, that's who I am on the stage. But who was the core of my being? Yes, I was a mum. Yes, I became a daughter of Jesus. But I always had this yearning to help. Like a yearning to help work in charities and help animals and help people. I was always drawn.
If you're just tuning in to Voices Unhindered, I'm speaking with former ballet teacher and HIV/AIDS counsellor Karen Harvey about her life experiences in South Africa, coming to know Christ, and spiritual battles.
To the less desirable, let's say that.
Cool.
Talk to those kind of people.
And just when you say drawn to the less desirable, could you tell me a little bit about your work working with those, counselling those with HIV and AIDS?
Yes. So that started in the 80s as well, when HIV/AIDS was absolutely taboo. It's like you didn't speak about that. And through having this yearning to always help people, like I said, when I was at that resort, I'll go to the HIV now. I did a counselling course with something called Lifeline, which was a telephonic counselling line that people could phone at any time, 24 hours. So I did their counselling course, and I was scheduled for certain hours in the day when my son was at preschool. Anyway, transferred to HIV/AIDS. I then met up with some people, this is before we changed our lifestyle and when I was still a professional dancer, who had this charity called AIDS Link. They were almost undercover because it was like you didn't talk about HIV/AIDS, and people who wanted to go and have HIV/AIDS tests did it in the background. So there was this little clinic called AIDS Link, and I met up with them. Somehow I got introduced to them, and they said, well, through your counselling through Lifeline, how would you feel about counselling with HIV/AIDS? And I said, well, I'd need to learn. I'd like to do the course, and I did the course, and I used to do shifts at this little clinic, and it was in the, I don't know if Christchurch has an area like this, but in Johannesburg there was like a really rough area of the Johannesburg city, and that's where the clinic was, or the counselling clinic. And I used to do a shift between 5 and 7 at night, which was quite dangerous. And people would come in to have sort of undercover HIV/AIDS tests. And through that, I realized, that's where I don't want to say that any of those people were less desirable, but it was like they couldn't be real about the fact that they were worried about, being, having an illness, and they couldn't just be upfront about it. It had to be sort of done behind the scenes. And I met incredible people there, and I learned in the counselling how to make people feel at ease. Like, it doesn't really matter what you're coming forward to do. It wasn't actually a Christian centre, but I feel like that Jesus shines through whatever you do from your heart and wherever he places you. And I had incredible experiences there, and I spent some years people that I met who had their tests and had, sometimes, were positive. And I walked a road with them and sometimes sat at their deathbed years down the line or shortly down the line and prayed with these people. And it gave me a sense of purpose. Such a sense of purpose. And I feel like the Lord really led me through all of that. And through that particular clinic, we decided that once a year, they got funding. The clinic got funding, and we produced these AIDS benefit concerts where people. So through my professional show business career, let's say, we put on these concerts. I got together a team of people, singers, dancers, producers, choreographers, and we put on these concerts, and the AIDS link with their contacts marketed these concerts, and they raised a huge amount of money to support. Every year, once a year, we did this concert, and the public, it started off small, but it became really big. I did 5 of them, and it was a massive amount of work. But I tell you something, we brought together dancers, singers, actors, drummers, bands.
And was this all your idea?
No, it wasn't my idea, but I was part of the team that came up with the idea. But I did become the producer.
That's cool.
Because it was a lot of work, and people did like 1 or 2, and they were like, oh, this is too much work. And we did it all voluntarily. We did not get paid to do this.
Wow.
But the money that was raised from those concerts was used to care for people who had HIV/AIDS and to create clinics and funding and homes for people who were suffering with HIV/AIDS. So that was a massive part of my life.
Yeah, and when you say some people are on their deathbeds, like going through the process of, because I know that my grandma, she passed from cancer, she just faded away, and going through that process of someone going through the process of seeing them, did you find it challenging emotion? Because I know I found it challenging to see her really sick and not feeling like I could do anything, or even I felt like my prayers weren't being heard. I felt like, am I doing something wrong? And, did you feel like that at any time?
And as cancer is, HIV/AIDS it's a word I want. It's a rough illness. Human bodies become depleted. So I'm talking about, this was before the time of antiretroviral drugs to help with HIV. This was before that. Like, there was nothing apart from, lifestyle and health choices. But yes, I did. People were completely, it was not easy and it was not pretty. What also happened is that there was a huge stigma attached. So these people walked with shame, and a lot of times families distance themselves from the people who were HIV.
It's as equally as hard, that side of things, as well as facing the physical.
Of course. I would get called out on a Sunday when I was with my family, and I had the choice to say yes or no, but I would mostly say yes. Somebody was on their last day, and would I come and pray with these people? Would I come and sit with these people? I remember sitting with the son of an orchestra master who had cast this child aside, and I remember sitting with this boy and holding his hand, and it was literally skin and bone, and he couldn't talk, and he could hardly swallow, and thinking, Lord, what do you want me to say? What do you want me to pray? I can even get tearful now about it, but just that his last moments, that he would be at peace and that he would know that he was loved by God, no matter what his journey had been.
Was this before or after you had the experience with God?
It was simultaneous.
Yeah.
Wow. It enlightened me hugely more once I had that with God. But in my spirit, I always knew a God.
Do you mind telling me a little bit about how you came to New Zealand and what brought you here?
My husband is a Kiwi. He is a New Zealand citizen. He grew up in South Africa. So he was born in New Zealand, spent 6 years on the North Island, and then his family went to South Africa. So he grew up there, lived there for however many years. But he spoke about coming back to New Zealand for 11 years prior to us coming. And I just didn't want to hear about it. My mum was elderly. I'm an only child. I was looking after my mum in her last years, and so it wasn't an option then. And I have my eldest son. He's 35 now, but he walked a road of addiction since the age of 13. He started with addiction, and he'd walked this very long road of adults. I couldn't leave him. Even as a grown adult man, I felt like I couldn't leave him. So my husband never put pressure on us to come to New Zealand, and at the time I was working as staff at my church. church, and I was like in this dream job, and I thought I never wanted to leave. And for a lot of the time I was in denial. And when I wasn't in denial, and when I started going to tough love support groups, I realized that I just felt like it was my duty to heal him. Like the Lord could heal him, but it's my responsibility because I'm his mother. There were times, there was a 5-year period where he was completely clean, where he met a beautiful woman and they had children, and he started working in the hospitality industry, which was not good for him in terms of that addiction.
Was this over here?
That was in South Africa. So this is before we came. This is like the lead up to why I said yes to coming to New Zealand. He then went back to addiction, and he went back harder and faster, and and there were 3 beautiful children.
Do you mind me asking, like, after having a wife and children, like, what do you think was the thing that drove him back?
I think it was the pressure. I think his first child was born when he was 21, and he wasn't mature enough for the responsibility. And soon after, there were 2 others. South Africa is a really harsh country. There's nothing in place to support people who perhaps don't have jobs or don't have food. If you don't work in South Africa, you don't eat. I think the responsibility was too much. So he tried to escape it. And so he went back to addiction. And of course, then it grew. And it grew way more. And then their relationship broke up. And I found myself as this granny kind of in the middle with small children of my own.
When you say addiction, do you mind telling me what kind of addiction?
He started off using marijuana, which I believed for years and years and years was the only thing that he was doing. And I think it was for a good amount of years. And then he got involved in things like ayahuasca. And then I didn't always know. And when we went for counselling, and he agreed to go for counselling, and he went to his first rehab when he was 14 years old, and then only went again to a rehab in his late 20s. I put him into a rehab when he was 14 because I did not know how to help him. So he went into a rehab as a minor. And it was a 6 weeks, and he relapsed quite soon after that, back to marijuana. But in doing all of that, he missed a lot of developmental stages in his life because he was using marijuana, which is it is mind-altering. So this counsellor that we were seeing, he said to me, he said something really profound. He said to me, as a parent, you will only ever know the tip of the iceberg of what your child is doing in terms of addiction. So when you ask him, he's not necessarily going to tell you the truth. Fast forward many, many, many very tough years, and my own children then at a young age were experienced a lot of, shall we say, fighting and a lot of trauma in the home because I was constantly trying to help him through this addiction. And when it didn't work, I didn't know what to do. So I was, he would have these massive anger outbursts. So when I tried to stop enabling him, when he would ask me for money, I would say no, and then that would push him into these anger outbursts where he would come into my house and just smash things. And my 2 younger children experienced all of this, which put them into, a lot of anxiety and a lot of, they both have suffered seriously from anxiety. Tried my best, but at the end of the day, this was still my child, and I was really doing what I knew best to do in my power as a mother. So his father, which was from my first marriage, we had divorced, and his father had gone to live in London, so his father was not present. My second husband,
your firstborn son, his father was not kind of in the picture.
Correct.
That explains things
a lot.
More. Yeah,
a lot.
And you don't always know what's carried on through the bloodline through the father. You kind of have to dig a bit deeper.
His father. It comes from a line of alcoholic fathers.
Oh, yeah.
And did land up being an alcoholic himself. My father was an alcoholic. So the genetics of my firstborn son were not great. That was already in his DNA. Interestingly enough, he has a really good relationship with his biological dad, and so do I. We have a great friendship. And he actually supported myself and my eldest son through once he got his life together, which only happened in his 40s in London, where he actually found the Lord, but where his life changed. He was able to support us financially. He was able to support his son, and they have a great relationship now, and him and I have a great friendship. My second husband played more of the fatherly role in my first son's life. And he was an incredible stepdad. And when my eldest son got to his teenage years, he started pushing away his stepdad because he was trying to find this relationship with his biological father. And yeah, we went through many years where my current husband and my eldest son's stepdad didn't have a relationship, just because my husband was trying to protect, our younger children, and he didn't really know how to deal with this at all. So we went through many dysfunctional years, let's say that.
Do you mind me asking about what the doctors, did they diagnose him with anything like schizophrenia?
Oh yes.
Did he hear them say that? Was it right in front of you, kind of?
Yes, he did.
How old was he when they...
He was in his 20s. He was in his...
And what led them to that diagnosis? Was it what he told them? Or?
Well, but I would believe him that he was not using, because that's what we do as mums. We always want the best and believe the best about our children.
That was the first time I tried marijuana too, when I was 14. But yeah, it doesn't help. I had bad anxiety. I thought it would help. But
calm you, yes.
Yeah, no, it doesn't do that.
Yeah, it doesn't do
it's
that.
Just trying to it's just like a crutch, kind of like alcohol.
Like an escape, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was the person who took him to a psychologist.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The psychologist then referred a psychiatrist, who then referred medication. Oh, yeah. It impounded him 4 years. 4 years. He did take mood stabilizers. He was diagnosed as schizophrenic, and
did he have because I know that from my biological mother, she had times where she was kind of, you'd think they're kind of normal, and then there'd be times when she was way out left field, and then you just couldn't even go around her.
Absolutely he did. And through the years, he was I was told by a psychologist that there is something called drug-induced schizophrenia. I don't believe
it's an open door spiritually.
It's an open door. He was dabbling in the darkness. He'd let demons into his life. And
it's funny because not everyone who takes drugs has the same experience. You open the door, but you don't know what's going to come in.
Many people who smoke marijuana who are just these chilled out people,
they seem reasonably intelligent,
yes.
But then there's others
and
that seriously,
Well, at a time that he wasn't allowed to see them at all, and then it was unless I was present. So I had this real responsibility, trying to make sure that the children had a relationship with their father. And we had this beautiful farm, and it was very hard for me to live because I was very invested in the farm. We had horses and we had animals. Anyway, we did that, and that was the beginning of the change.
Oh yeah,
because. And I said to him, we are going to be moving and you will have somewhere to live, but I'm not going to be able to tell you where I live. And, it was awful. He called me all kinds of names and what kind of a mother am I? And
Yeah, you have to put up boundaries.
Oh, yeah. That was the beginning of my boundaries. Up until then, I wasn't able to.
I can totally relate because I had to do the same with my mum. It's a
100%.
natural salter. You have to, if it's not godly, like if God wants you to put up those boundaries, then you have to follow his leading,
100%. And I did get that counsel. Through my church. And it took me long to take it on board. You know, I got because
you feel like mean and all that, but...
Oh, yes. 100%.
I'm sure that's the devil, like, guilt-tripping you. Like,
I didn't know that at the time, but if I look back, I do believe that now. And my eldest son and I had very much a soul tied. But I saw how my family changed when my son couldn't pitch on our doorstep, you know, and create havoc.
And it's also important to recognize it's not the person, it's the spirit working through the person that you're putting boundaries up until you see that they're free.
Through this time, my eldest son, it really got, and that was actually through COVID, that it got really worse. In South Africa, we couldn't even drive our cars. Like, I couldn't drive to the farm to take him food. And after a while, I just thought, you know what, Lord, I can't know that my son is starving and I can't get him food. So please, Lord, will you prepare the way? I'm going to drive my car and I'm going to take groceries and I'm going to come straight back. And I realized this is not just marijuana. There's something going on here, because he he would have this darkness in his eyes when he looked at me.
I saw the same thing with my mum,
Oh.
like when she was about to hit me, and that's the last time I saw her. I didn't see her eyes when she was like standing by my door, but I felt a darkness over her face, like bawling my eyes out, because the last thing she said to me was, "You're not my daughter." So I was just, obviously all the rejection came up from a child, and I was like so sad, but then she wouldn't move, and I was like, "I'm going to call the police if you don't move from my car." It was like she stalked me to my car, and it wasn't her, it's the spirit in her. And she said, "All the gang members around here know me, and like, you better get off my territory," something like that. And Lily was crying in the back. She knew, like, she picked it up. And then I was just like, oh my gosh. And then I just drove with her standing in the door. So I know what you mean by the dark eyes.
Oh,
the darkness.
It's terrifying. And I had now learnt through the counsel that I'd received to separate the person from the spirit.
Yeah.
And I had seen the demonic in my son. I'd seen it playing out. I'd seen the destruction. I'd seen the... So it was almost, in a weird kind of way, it was almost freeing for me. Like, okay, this is not my boy.
Yeah.
This is something that it has taken over a spirit that's taken over his body and taken over his mind. And then one day that I had taken food there, he said to me, "Mum, I need to go to rehab." I said to him, "Why do you need to go? What for what?" And he said, "I'm using crystal meth." And I was like... My husband, looked at his emails and he said, "Oh, there's an email from a position I applied for in New Zealand. I'd forgotten I'd applied for this position." Anyway, they had sent an email to say, "How soon can you get?" For the first time, I didn't understand it, but there was peace. I had peace in my heart. And I said to him, "I think you should go." He said, "But what about you? I'm not going without you." I said, "I'll come." He said, I knew I was going to go. I just didn't know how. I was going to leave my son. I didn't know how I was going to leave my grandchildren, his children, that I was partly their mother almost. And through that time, I said to my eldest son, "I'm going to New Zealand." And we had said to him, for years when he was growing up, we'd spoken about coming to New Zealand and that he would come with. But now he was a dad. I had a prophetic word over his life 4 years prior that said, this woman stood up in a ladies' event that I was at with my church, and she said, "I believe there's somebody sitting in this audience whose son's name is Dylan. If that's you, will you stand up?" And I just rose to my feet. And I was the only person who stood, so it must have been for me. And she said to me, she said a lot of things, but the thing that stood out is that she said, "You've been through a lot. But I want to tell you that when you feel it is impossible for you, that's when it's possible for the Lord." And there was a friend of mine in the audience or in the congregation who recorded it.
So you surrendered it to the Lord, before you're trying to control him and control the situation.
Turns out the girl who took over my job at the church's son had been in the same rehab.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to get a court order from New Zealand to get my son committed to this rehab. And it was long term, but I had worked through, I'd looked at the testimonies of these amazing men of faith who'd been through. They had what they called an intervention team. So I got to be honest, trauma does an incredible thing. It's like part of your memory is just erased. Well, that's what I felt.
Yeah.
I have things that I do not remember. So I wrote from this particular rehab because if I had said to him, "Look, would you like to go to rehab?" the answer would have been no.
Yeah.
So these two big guys, tall, big men, I'd spoken to on the phone. I'd never met them. They'd got my address and they'd said, "When is the best time to go?" And I'd told them, and they arrived on my son's doorstep. And I had said to them, "I don't know what the reaction is going to be, but my son is not he's a lean kind of a guy. He's not a big guy. And I don't know what the reaction is. What I do know is that he might never talk to me again in my life. But if that is what saves his life, I'm ready for that." And they had said to me, no trouble, no trouble. And they phoned me on the way to the farm, and it was actually, it's a little bit of humor, really. And the driver of the vehicle said to me, "I promise you, as soon as we have him in the car, we'll send you a text so that you know he's safe. And when we get him to the rehab, which is his destination, which is on the other side of the city, we will send you a photograph of him being admitted into the rehab so you know we've taken him to the right place." So that was going on over the phone after we'd had the big laugh about the gun. I got a phone call and I saw it was from the driver. It was from Dayton, and I saw that there was a WhatsApp call coming through, so I immediately answered it. And he said, "Hello, ma'am. I just want you to know that you're on speakerphone in the car and Dylan is in the car." And I thought, here it comes. He's going to swear at me. He's going to call me, because I'd experienced that a lot. He's going to call me every name under the sun. I didn't even know if I wanted to take the call, but I was so grateful to hear he was in the car. And I said, "Okay, Dayton, put it." And he said, "I'm going to put Dylan on." And the words he spoke were, "Hello, Mom." And I thought, here it comes. He's going to swear at me. And he said, "Thank you for sending me the help that I needed. Not the help I wanted." I didn't realize, but then I would talk to him after the first 3 months. I would talk to him once a week, and I could start to hear in his tone of voice the clarity and the.
That's cool.
Once I saw him, which was earlier this year in 2024, I went back for a month from when he was going to be discharged. I could hear as the time went on, and I would talk to him that once a week on the phone. But I could hear in his voice, "Oh my word, I'm starting to recognize the child I raised. I'm starting to recognize his faith. I'm starting to recognize he has been clean since May of 2023, and he is still clean today, which is helping him."
Do you mind me asking quickly, like just before I end the show, or did you suggest that he get any deliverance prayer?
Addiction is the founder of the rehab, and the guy who's the pastor, he believes the only thing that sets you free from addiction is Jesus Christ.
That's cool.
That is the statement on all their documentation.
Oh, that's so cool. Because not every rehab, like, you know how there's...
No, that's why I sent him. But that is Pastor Dave's testimony. And Pastor Dave has written a book, and I'll just tell you the front of this was his mentor. This was my son's mentor for a year.
Oh, wow.
On the front of the book it says, or it might say drug addict, policeman, criminal, pastor. He used crystal meth as well, but also people who had done other drugs. And he said, "Mom, in the first 3 months, a couple of those guys they didn't survive. They were taken to institutions. They were taken to psychiatric hospitals because their brains were too damaged." And he said the lights came on for him within that 3 months period when his brain became clear. He said, "I actually felt my brain clearing. I could actually think properly, and I could make choices."
I believe the Lord can restore like those damages that like drugs have done.
So some of the guys didn't experience that, but my boy did.
That's amazing.
And I believe that is only possible through the power of Jesus.
What a testimony.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Voices Unhindered. It's great hearing from my listeners. Reach out with questions and comments through Insta or Facebook. Just search for Voices Unhindered. I'm interested to know what other topics and voices you'd like me to bring on the show. Join me every Wednesday at 9:30 a.m. on Plains FM 96.9. You can find past episodes at plainsfm.org.nz and subscribe to Voices Unhindered on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to never miss an episode.